Well, we are 2 minutes past the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody, to today's panel session on The Price is Right, Strategies for Biotools That Sell. I'm Jim West, Associate Director at Biotools Innovator, and this webinar is going to be slightly different than the ones we've done in the past. This one is going to include breakout sessions at the end with the panelists, so we'll talk about that a little more. But the trade-off is that we're not able to live stream and do breakout rooms in the same session. So, unlike the traditional webinar where you're kind of firewalled in the conversation here, it's an open Zoom meeting. So, if you guys could please mute yourself and keep yourself just as an observer for the first hour. And then after the first hour is over, we're going to have the panelists talk about their breakout rooms and what they're going to be talking about in them, and then you can choose where to go. So I'm really excited. This was one of our highest rated panels from last year, and let's get into it. So let me get the slides up here somewhere. There we go. All right. So today we are going to be talking about pricing strategy, and what that means for life science tool companies. Um, I'm going to open it up to our panelists here. I think we're missing one at the moment who hasn't joined yet, but hopefully they'll be on soon and we can catch up. But today we've got Brian Poltolov, an independent consultant, formerly with Thermo Fisher and Broad Oak Capital Partners. We have Edward Graham Brown at Rosa Pina Consulting, Sri Iyengar, alumni from 2021 at Elemental Machines. You may have run into him before at the summit. And we have Steph Miller, an independent consultant, formerly at Thermo Fisher as well. So, Brian, if you wouldn't mind, kick us off, tell us a little bit about yourself, and yeah, take it away.
Sure. Nice to see everybody, and thanks for joining. Brian Poltolov. As Jim alluded to, I spent 12 years at Thermo Fisher in business leadership, general management roles. Started up and ran their cross-company cell and gene therapy business, among others, and a lot of work in the reagents and instrumentation space in particular. Then I went over from there to Broad Oak Capital, which is one of the founding sponsors of Biotools Innovator. So thank you for that, Broad Oak. Spent 3 years at Broad Oak. I was an operating partner there, leading their investment strategy in CGT and bioprocess. And now for the last couple of years, I've been doing independent board work, freelance work. I've been involved with BTI since its founding, 5 years ago or so, and was participated on this panel last year, and was glad to hear the feedback, and we'll try to
I
remember what we
think
talked
Brian
about.
froze at the perfect time. So, thank you, Brian. Steph, please.
Right, yes. My name's Stephanie Miller. I spent 11 years at Thermo Fisher Scientific as well. Started in pricing and then held some various roles in marketing strategy, developed a loyalty program, and different roles like that. I prior to that was in pricing for more consumer products on the business to business side. So have a little bit of a unique perspective of pricing in various industries and where you can learn some best practices. And then I have been an independent consultant for about a year and a half. This is my first time with Biotools. I'm very excited and looking forward to today's conversation.
Thank you, Steph. Glad to have you. And Shri.
Hi everyone. My name is Sridhar Iyengar, or Sreed for short. I'm an alumni from 2021. My background is I'm an engineer turned biochemist and have been building startups for the last 25 years. Did a medical device company back in 2001, then did a wearable tech company in 2011, and then I've been running Elemental Machines since 2015. And we are a Internet of Things company where we enable our customers to have smart labs, smart clinics, smart factories, and we service the biotech and pharma industry.
Thanks, Sri. If you could, your microphone sounds a little bit light to me,
Okay.
a little bit quiet. If you could maybe find a way to turn that up just a little bit,
Yeah,
be helpful.
settings. Yep. Mhm.
All right. Unfortunately, Edward hasn't been able to join yet. I think he's having some technical issues, so he'll hopefully be on here shortly. But let's jump into it. So, this topic specifically is interesting, and I wanted to kind of work with the panelists to give you guys a groundwork. And so, Steph, I'm going to hand this to you, but if you could maybe kind of walk through the world of pricing strategy. What are the ways you can price your product? What does it mean? You know, what are the kind of the what are the ways we can sort of consider in this world of how we price our products?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to, and feel free, the other panel to jump in if I'm missing things. So, kind of some of the big buckets to think about with pricing is you think you can go kind of from the ground up. So, how much does it cost? You make sure you're covering your margin, operating costs, which is a great way to think to ensure you're meeting your financial goals and investment. But it really, then you can also look at value pricing and doing market analysis. Where are you at in the market position? How are you against your competitors? How differentiated is this? What is the long-term strategy? Is this we come in and we're going to keep innovating? Is it a complete disruptor to the market? And really, my theory has always, or my guiding principle has been, you charge a fair price for a fair product. So you want to make sure you're covering your costs, but you really want to do the hard work of doing that market assessment. What are the comparable products, your differentiation, and how can you price that to show the value? Again, if you have multiple products that are coming, how can you tier it so that you are maybe able to hit some of those more academics with a more basic product or less services combined? How can you position it to pharma to ensure that they're getting all of the value, and partnering very closely with your marketing strategy on that? And you can move into, as you have more software based, or even I've seen it with larger instruments, how you can bundle things together, do more service based, or leasing, including your service or technical scientists in with it. And so just some very different models. I personally always think it is best to start the exercise from the financial standpoint with cost, so you kind of know your floor. And so as you're doing the hard work in how can you actually position this product, because I have been part of projects where we go do all of that and price it out and realize it would take us 6 years to recoup our initial capital, and that's usually not okay for companies. So
Or
it's
even
kind of
worse, you're
nice
just
to,
taking a loss on your sales.
yeah, not, turns out people don't like that. So yeah, I think it's good to keep both in mind, no matter which strategy you move forward with.
All right, thank you. And we do have Edward Graham Brown who's joined us now. So thanks, Edward. These slides here are provided by Edward. But Edward, if you could just kind of do a quick introduction, and then we'll continue on.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I kept on being asked for a password and I didn't have it. And anyway, I'm here, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name's Edward Graham Brown, and I have sort of like an interest in pricing and experience in pricing from a role that I had for many years at Millipore as the head of strategic marketing for their bioproduction business, which is still growing. I hear I saw some results that came out this morning, so I'm always keen interest in what's happening in the market. I just wanted to say on this different these different transactional pricing models, if I could just jump in. Uh, Generally speaking, they've historically, if you look back in the life science tools market, is really been cost plus a market based. So cost plus pricing is, as you probably all know, but I'll say it anyway. It's looking at the cost to manufacture and commercialize a product, and then adding a margin to that, a profit margin to it, which is somewhat different to a market-based pricing approach, which is, I think, covered in the reference and tiered pricing to a certain extent, which is where you're looking at comparable technologies or comparators, basically competitors that might have something similar to what you are trying to develop and commercialize, and you're basically setting a price based on that price in the market of a competitive offering. And then the third is sometimes referred to as a demand-based pricing. Um, but in that slide, it was value-based pricing, and value-based pricing is something I think many people maybe intuitively understand, and you're really trying to charge or set a price based on either the perceived value or the economic value that the product or service brings to your customers. And obviously, in the life sciences industry or life science tools industry, a lot of what we do is based on intellectual property. And so we have patents that underpin a particular technology, and there is inherent value in that. And we want to try and articulate that value either through an economic gain or some type of improvement in efficiency, whatever it might be. But, if we step outside of the life science tools industry and you think of brands like Hermes or Louis Vuitton or you name it, a luxury good manufacturer, there is also value-based pricing there because there's a perception that from the customer's perspective that they are getting some type of benefit from that brand, right? And that is built into the price structure. But value-based pricing is one of those. Anyway, I will pause. Sorry, Jim. I hope that my introduction was okay.
All good. Thank you. Thank you, Edward. So yeah, we've got a few more things to get to in the slides, but I'd like to kind of open it up with Shri. Shri, you're our alumni. You've gone through the program. You've built kind of your business. You've gone through a lot of these exercises and challenges yourself. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about, your story at Elemental Machines. Where did you start? How did you approach pricing strategy? And how did you sort of synthesize all that as you were moving forward?
Sure. So actually, is my audio better now? I think
It is.
okay, great. Um, so we're probably not your typical Biotools company in that we're more of a software company and software tools and with the hardware devices, so IoT. So for us, pricing the revenue model is a subscription. It's a per device per year annual subscription model. So the way that we kind of got started was really just through experimentation. We uh, initially piloted our solution again, very early pre-production prototypes. We piloted our solution with a number of early adopters, and we gave it to them for free because we actually wanted to get the data that our devices were collecting. Again, we were connecting to machines and instruments and buildings and sensor data and all that. What was very interesting was when we finished the pilot, usually about 2 or 3 months, something like that, we would go to take the devices out, and virtually every one of our early users, again, we weren't charging them for anything. Virtually every one of them said, "Oh, this has been very helpful and very useful. Can we keep it?" And that's when we said, "All right, how does $100 sound? And how about $100 and $5 a month, and $100 and $20 a month?" And so we actually iterated through that. And that's kind of how we got our initial foothold, was just through sheer experimentation like that. And we really didn't do a competitive analysis, because at the time there weren't really any direct competitors or direct equivalents that we could point to. So it was just through seeing what the pain point was, until when a customer would say, no, it's too expensive.
So how did that work and functionally? Did you raise it till you got the first no? Did you do it till you got a couple no's? Did you look at like what competitors were doing to baseline anything?
Yeah, well, it was funny. I got kind of a reality check when I went to go raise our Series A. I went in there very proudly saying, we convert 90% of our pilots into paying customers. At which point the VC's feedback was, yeah, that means you're undercharging. Yeah, Brian, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So I was very happy, like, wow, we have a really successful product, and the rule of thumb is you should have about 1/3 success rate, um, and so that was kind of what we went back to the drawing board and said, okay, let's just keep raising the price until we get to somewhere between 30 to 50% rejection, 30-50% of folks saying yes. So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Brian, do you have anything to add to that? You're muted. You're muted, Brian.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Jim. Certainly different strategies in terms of price skimming, margin maximization, and so forth. And I mean, you can run whatever economic models or financial models you want to. I would say, broadly speaking, companies should, early on, it probably does behoove you to try to drive towards adoption, especially when your brand isn't out there. You're trying to get critical mass. You're trying to not, collect data, collect publications, references, all the rest of those types of things. It's a little bit of an investment in the future. As you get kind of later on, you probably do want to think about more of a, optimizing for margin and EBITDA and so forth as you get more established. And frankly, you probably have more credibility and more value to contribute as a company because you're more established. You've got credentials and so forth, and people have actually heard of you. Think about it like music concerts, right? If you look and you see music concerts, and earlier, less well-known folks, they don't charge as much, and then whatever Taylor Swift concert tickets go for, that I have no idea because I'll never see that one. But too much. So I like charging too much and having a lot of people come and pay for it, though. And so I think that's broadly thinking. Think about your business strategy, think about what you're trying to achieve, and then think about whether you're trying to maximize for revenue, whether you're trying to maximize for margin, how much you care about the number, the quantity of customers, and then also think about the customer life cycle process. So as you're thinking about if they're trying it, testing it, evaluating it, moving into the future, are they going to need GMP offerings? Is there going to be additional service and support they're going to require? Are there going to be other things they're going to need, different licensing requirements for commercial manufacturing? Lots of considerations to think about lifetime customer value and the pricing strategies all.
Interesting. So not just maximizing dollar value, but a whole bunch of different learnings and things to consider when you're thinking through that. Steph, you worked at Thermo Fisher for a while working on pricing. I'd love to hear kind of your experience there. Like what was your philosophical approach, and how did you guys, integrate or work around, in highly competitive fields that you played in with probably many incumbents and uprisers?
Yeah, so one of my I came in to help um, work on a product line that had not had pricing increases in over 10 years, which is the world I came from unheard of, and a disservice to the company. And they were really price conscious and trying to hit a niche market. But what was happening was they were staying in the trying to infiltrate the market, and it started to become overall a race to the bottom, which doesn't serve anybody. And trying to really change the mindset of not only you're now hurting an entire product group, not just for us, but other competitors, because people are trying to constantly undercut, but you're not leaving yourself the margin to continue to innovate. And trying to change that mindset was difficult but worthwhile. And we did, I think, in year one, we did a 5% price increase, which our product team was up in arms about. And we had zero pushback and like an 85% price realization. So that means what we pushed through on the list price increase was primarily realized. Which again, taking out of industry is amazing. Usually you don't see price realization that high. So I think learning to kind of what Brian was saying, like you might have a starting strategy, but you need to think about where you're going, and that if you want to continue to innovate, you need to keep the margin there to do that, and that you're not just you're servicing the wider community, and doing a race to the bottom serves no one.
Steph, if I can just add to that,
Yeah.
just for a second. I'm sorry, Jim.
Yeah.
But just, I think that I agree completely. You're doing yourself a disservice and disservice to the company if you're not thinking about pricing every year. Inflation is generally positive in almost all the markets we serve. And so if you leave price flat, you're actually taking a price decline in real terms. And to get a couple points, 3% or something like that in price is like you don't get any pushback from customers from doing that. But if you wait 3 years and then you do a 10% increase, which effectively would have been the same thing, you do 0, 0, 10, then you're going to get a lot more pushback from customers. So you're really leaving a lot on the table, and it's not something that you can necessarily just make up easily later. That's been my experience.
Thanks, Brian. I was going to ask as a follow-up, Steph, how do you actively avoid a race to the bottom? And if people are going there, is it unique value propositions? Is it market strategy? Is it really what do you do to avoid that outcome?
Yeah, and it can get tricky once you're in that. I think that's where innovating new product development and trying to retire older products to show that innovation, even if it's not internally, like, well, this is not hugely groundbreaking, or, it doesn't justify a 10% price increase. That's where you rely on your marketing team. That's why you have a whole business that again, and try to get, and I've primarily been with more premier brands, and that's your responsibility, is you're protecting a market.
So I've got another slide here. Edward, I'd like to pass it back to you. You were kind enough to provide these slides. I thought this was really compelling. You had this slide here about the comparison of profit drivers and what a 1% variation in price can do. Can you explain this to us real quick? You're muted, by the way.
Not now. Not now.
Nope.
Yes. What I think the main takeaway from this slide is that pricing is a very strong lever on profitability, and it's what it means is people usually talk about price increases or price increments or price discounts, and what I'd like to say by this is that, if you change your price, you increase your price by 1%, or if you decrease your price by 1%, then this has an operating profit change. So if the sales price increases by 1%, this has a corresponding effect on operating profit, the change in operating profit by 11. And that's the strongest driver on the chart, because if you are able to make a change in your fixed costs, that would have corresponding a 1% change in fixed costs would have, or variation in fixed costs would have a 2.3% impact on the bottom line. It's really just to show the power of pricing as a driver in operating profit change from as I said as I just said. And just coming back to one other point, and that is when you're thinking about price, particularly if it's for a new product. My personal philosophy, and I think a lot of people think this too, but it needs to be said, and that is you're not necessarily trying to maximize price, you're trying to optimize price. And so it's optimization of the point at which you can charge a price which a customer is willing to pay for your product or service, beyond which, if you were to increase it, it would have a negative effect, or below which you may be leaving money on the table. So you're trying to find that sweet spot where you can charge a price which uh, it makes sense, you're providing value, and it's not too much, or it's like the Goldilocks, the Goldilocks zone. That's what I think that's what the goal should be, at least. So anyway, I explained this slide, Jim. Back to you.
Thanks, Edward. So let's kind of talk about price here for a little bit. And Shri, I'd like to kind of bring it back to you as someone who's got a software product. Do you guys have different pricing, or do you think about pricing differently among segments of your market, like industry, academia, pharma, whoever those customers may be? Do you guys is it baseline pricing, or do you sort of segment it based on the customer type?
Yeah, we looked at experimenting a little bit, but what we found was that at least for our customer base, we couldn't really segment it that way. In that we couldn't just say like there's academic pricing and big pharma pricing and small biotech pricing. But instead, the way we discounted was through volume pricing and length of contract. Um, and there were, like, for example, for academia, if it was just one particular lab, then they really didn't get a discount. But if we were able to get commitments for the entire department or the entire university, even though they didn't buy everything up at once, if it was in the contract, there was an expansion that's anticipated, then we discount on that. The other way that we kind of played the pricing game was through our land and expand program, where small companies would only buy a handful of our devices, but we knew they were going to expand. And we said, well, once you hit certain tiers of volume, then volume discounts start to kick in. So for us, it was because of the nature of our product, it was better for us to discount them that way than to segment um, by different cohort.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you, Brian or Shri. Kind of expanding on that. Um, are there models you've seen for like revenue sharing, where you've got like per seat models, or is there if you've got a CRO or some other customer who's, third partying you or using it in a process, do you think about adding revenue on top of that, or how do you think through that? Anybody can
Sure, you want
jump
to?
in.
Yes. So we actually have a very active partners and alliances channel program. So and it's very public. We've had a very long successful relationship with PerkinElmer, for example, and we white label and OEM our products through them. Um, so we have a couple of different ways of partnering. We have referral agreements. So uh, if a partner takes us to a customer, they get a one-time referral payment based on first year's contract value. There's rev shares, revenue shares, where we say a certain percentage, et cetera, et cetera. There's also fixed pricing, whereas we will give certain pricing to a partner, and then they can mark it up and sell it however they want. And it really depends on the partner's preference. We have some partners who want no revenue share. They just want to be able to include us in their portfolio as a kind of a premier partner. And although it's counterintuitive, but they don't want revenue because they don't want their customers to see them as biased towards one technology partner or another.
Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Um, Brian or Edward or Steph, can one of you comment on sort of how do you actually go about thinking about sort of that difference in academic versus industry pricing? Is it a multiple? Is it some cost plus? How do you sort of address that and think about that from the market perspective? Who wants to take it?
Happy to start it off and then feel free to jump in. But I think again, you have to think long term. Are they going to go through volume? Is it getting into one lab in academic and it can grow to multiple labs? Are they going to publish? Will you be getting citations? That is value in a way to consider taking bigger loss than you would consider. Again, it's working with sale primarily. I've done it with the sales team of like, what is the lifetime value of this customer? What is, if it's an instrument, can you pull through consumables? Is it something that they might be willing to go into a more base model, introductory, and in 3 years you can upsell? I don't typically like, because of the transition from academic to industry, to mess with list prices unless you can do different products. It's just what I have seen is a bad look when they're like, why? So now I have money and I'm paying 3 times the amount. I'm sure there's use cases where it makes sense, but I have not seen it. So I think it's really
Sorry,
thinking
you
through
don't
that.
you don't see it like a quality difference, like a labeling difference of some value of indicator of quality, or even if it's the same product, but the label
Yeah,
there.
so yeah, I do think you can do that, is similar or same product, putting 2 different labels and hyping up the features on one and so you can go to market with very, very similar products. I know we did that with our reagents, that when you put them head to head, they were almost identical, but they carried different brand names, and you were able to really highlight the benefits of the Premier brand to the customers that cared about that and had more of a everyday kind of essential brand product and we didn't invest the time and marketing into it as much either. It was more of a nuts and bolts product.
A lot of times you're going to do this where there's different use cases, different customer segments, and so forth. So in my mind, those are 2 different products. It'd be like pregnancy tests. Actually, if you go to the store and look for pregnancy tests, you can find them a lot of times in 2 different places. One of them is in pink next to the Pampers and Huggies and so forth. And one of them is labeled with darker black or so forth next to the condoms. And they often will be the same manufacturer, different packaging, different price points, and so forth. So encourage you to try that out sometime.
Similar solutions to a different problem.
Yeah, right. Different customer segments, different needs, different purchase price sensitivity, et cetera, that they're kind of looking for and targeting. But the same thing is happening for reagents and other life science products. I completely agree with Steph that I don't recommend kind of publicly having out there 2 different price points for anybody, because it leaves bad taste in the mouth. But you can accomplish that through discounting, and I think Steph gave some nice examples around why and when you might want to do that for broader marketing awareness. Just one other comment on discounting, and this is a little bit tactical, but it's something I see a lot. It's totally fine to have a 10% off promotion or something like that, et cetera. But if you're actually working with a customer and you're like trying to discount them to on like a customer specific thing, I really recommend not discounting whole numbers, 5, 10%, 15%,
Yeah.
20%, or something like that. Because when you see that, it looks to a customer like, okay, well, they just did it. That's a convenient number, but it doesn't tell you that they're actually really optimized. So if you go with a 23% discount or a 36.2% discount or a 12.1, it looks like you actually calculated that with a lot more thought, and there's probably some math and some cost piece or something else behind it, which obviously you have no idea the difference. But the difference in 12% and 10% is nothing in some sense, but the subliminal value is material. And so
Okay.
just one little helpful hint with discounting.
Great.
Just wanted to add one thing, Jim, if it's okay, and that you were talking about quality. It's clear that you can differentiate, and it's probably an exception to what Steph and Brian were saying, but you can certainly differentiate your price point based on the intended use of the product. So if it is for research use only versus ready for CGMP use, like in a clinical trial or in manufacturing of a biological drug, it's clear that your product has met different standards, and with those standards of quality, there are costs associated with it, and as a result, the price point is going to vary.
Okay. So Edward, I'd like to kind of ask you too about kind of the strategy. And this question comes from our cohort, so it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say. But the question is, how can you learn about competitive pricing, and how do you consider that without tipping off your competitors?
Yeah, I mean it's a straightforward question, but it's probably got there's a multitude of answers, right? Um, the reality is that sometimes customers will tell you, particularly if it's a technical customer as opposed to a purchasing agent or a purchasing manager. They might not tell you the exact price point, but they will tell you whether or not you're selling them a Ford Focus versus a Ferrari. So it's you have some sense if there's an ouch. This is um, you can get you get a sense of, are you 20% or 30% above the achieved selling price of your main market competitor. Sometimes you're lucky and you get an actual copy of an invoice. I've actually received in the past invoices from customers saying, I was not joking. This is what we have been quoted. And in that case, then for sure, what is the achieved price. But it might be, to one of Brian's earlier points, it could be a campaign. You don't know what the context is. It could have been a competitive conversion project. I think the other thing, interestingly, so since I became a consultant, I went to, and I think it was actually with Brian. I met Brian at not with him, but I had met him for breakfast at the BPI conference in Boston a couple of years ago. And I put on my consultant badge, and I was able to walk freely onto the booths of different manufacturers like Thermo Fisher, Danaher, you name it. And I didn't get the rebuff that I had in the past, like where people are gradually pushing you off the thick pile carpet. But you can ask questions to people at the booth, and frankly speaking, I know it sounds a little bit underhand, but my team at Millipore, I would ask them to try and find out that type of information, from customers and from competitors. Not necessarily directly. I mean, you're not going to say, how much do you charge and what is your achieved price for this bottle of chromatography media or this particular cassette that is used in tangential flow filtration. But you can get a general sense of where the market is, either through sending out surveys, talking to customers, talking to stakeholders, even listening to quarterly analyst reports where people will ask questions. Are you gaining or losing in price? Tell us about your growth walk from 2023 to 2024. How much of that was attributable to price gains? How much was of that growth was attributable to underlying market growth or forex headwinds or tailwinds, that sort of thing. So you can get information from a variety of sources, and I don't know whether one is better than the other, but I think ultimately Occam's razor, or the idea that the person that probably knows that is the person that's buying it, or someone close to that. So it's usually the customer, I think, is a good source.
Thanks. That's good stuff. I have a short story myself. I have a story of failure in this topic. I
Ah,
had a exosome company, and I was trying to figure out what one of our competitors was selling their product for, and it wasn't listed on their website. There wasn't a lot of information, so I had an academic co-founder, and I pretended to be from her lab. And I was like on the academic side, hey, I'm interested in like maybe doing some studies and want to inquire about the product. And the salesperson actually did their background, and they were like, wait, are you also the CEO of the company that's a competitor here? And I was like, well, yeah. And it didn't go any further, and it was really awkward. I did it, but if you do it, maybe pass it off to a third party who's less directly identifiable. That's my takeaway. Um, Steph, I'd like to take it back to you. When we think about new product entries, um, maybe again, a lot of our companies, they're kind of new, they're differentiated, the benefits are novel. How do you think about price strategy for new product entries?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way I have done it in the past is trying to find, something similar and starting that as your base again, and what it doing that feature benefit and starting to put a value on it. So, and that can be everything from UI, UX, um, speak, does it help accuracy? Is it easier to use? And what is that going to be worth to the lab? Is it, can you all of a sudden run things in half the time? That's a big deal. Or is it 20% more accurate, or we're in a completely new product or a huge market disruptor? What is it going to enable them to do? And can it replace a different process? And starting to actually put dollar amounts on it. And that's typically how I've built a list price, is looking at the benefits and the features and what is it, I usually
Yeah.
do a simple 1 through 10 rating. Is this super beneficial? Is it minorly beneficial? And then what's the price that you can attach to it?
And do you think about like that in terms of just like dollar saved or value provided, and then is there a discount on that, or you just kind of go straight with that sort of estimated dollar value?
I usually do, I have done, and again, it depends on the product and the strategy. There's multiple ways, but a lot of you start it, and I like to start with the list price and then think about where can we discount from there. Again, I like to start with those high, again, not an unfair, but a higher list price, because you can discount, and it's a lot harder to raise your list price 30% in the first year. It's easier to say, this is the list and we're going to bring it down with discounts. About
Netflix does
70%.
that.
True. They do. Yeah. Grocery stores. Yeah.
Anybody else? Do you have thoughts on that?
yeah, I would say that Steph is correct. That trying to understand what is the problem that is being solved by the technology or the product. I think primary market research is really important in that respect, and I think we may have discussed this before, that there are certain tools that can be used to understand what trade-offs customers are prepared to make for certain features and benefits versus or vis-a-vis price. And then it's a question of, just an example, maybe from the dairy industry, you've got um, a a milk production. You're producing milk which using a particular technology that confers a 20%
Actually,
increase.
Edward, well, let me interrupt you. So we do have that slide. I've got that slide up here that you've got. So let's do that waterfall slide, and I think you can talk to this a little more directly
Yeah.
with that here.
Yeah, so this is actually talking about price erosion. It's not talking about product values and how to. But I will talk to this slide as well because so here's an example of where you've set the list price at for a product at $250. And generally what happens is you'll have it could be a catalog business, or it could be something where you're quoting on a per product area basis, or a product basis. And there will be a standard discount that's typical from the list price. Very often that is volume based. And as you increase the volume of the order, the size of the discount can increase. So look at your standard discount, and then your volume based discount, and then there may be a further discount to seal the deal, or to win the deal, which could be a most favored nations, or competitive discount, just to make sure that you win the deal. And then that's the final invoiced price. However, a lot of companies do not consider other elements, or do not quantify other elements that are also giveaways, quote unquote. These could be figuring out, how much it's going to cost to actually send this product from, for example, Boston to Eastern Europe, what the freight charges are associated with that. If there is something that's written into the contract regarding payable 30 days net, or net 30 days, or net 90 days, if there is a discount if the customer is willing to pay in cash, um, if there are any rebates, and then some type of off invoice promotion. All of these things add to the erosion in price, and you can end up with a discount on the far right of this chart, which shows that the overall impact of that is that you've taken a product from $250 to ultimately not 205 but 160. And that shows that you're going back to that initial slide where there is a variation of 1%, a variation of 1% on the price, either upwards or downwards. In this case, downwards corresponds to a 9% decrease or increase in operating profit. And you can see you can very quickly end up with a situation where you're actually much less profitable than you expected. So, but just quickly on Steph's point about product values, if you can, for example, quantify, let's say a bioprocessing example, what is the process economic benefit in terms of yield, in terms of cycling, in terms of reduction in buffer use, or utilities use, the benefit of a particular product in a workflow, then you can use that as a starting point to say, well, we are providing this value and we can demonstrate it, and that is part of our price structure. So you have these product values that can be used to justify price. And again, the objective is not to maximize price, but to optimize it.
If Edward, if I could just build on something you said there. So I completely agree with you on the looking at and trying to quantify value, and to the earlier discussion that you and Steph have about market research. But I want to be clear about what market research does not mean in pricing. You cannot go to customers and ask them if they'd be willing to pay, $100 or $500 or $2,000 for this new product, or for an existing product. You can't ask direct questions around pricing. I mean, you can ask them, you'll get feedback back, but it won't be representative of actually behavior and activity. So direct questioning to customers, people, it's not even that they feel like, oh, well, I should tell them that, I will only pay $500 so that way the price will be cheaper. It's not so much that, it's People don't actually really be able to directly. Most people can't actually answer that. Yes, I would buy it for 500, but I wouldn't buy it for 750. They don't know. So you can get it through observed behavior and activity, like Sri was talking about in the beginning of the session with his sampling program or his prototypes and the conversion rate. You can use other market research methods like indirect methods like adaptive conjoint and other types of methods as well prior to launch. But just to be really clear, there's either zero or negative value in actually going out and actually asking customers directly, from my experience, direct.
Very good point. I think that a lot of, to your point about the analytical software approaches, a lot of those are, you just get inferences. So you're not necessarily asking a direct question. It's more an inference that you get from the response that, yeah, I mean, I would love to get a 30% increase in dynamic binding capacity from this from this resin, but I wouldn't trade that for a price increase, for example. And if you do that across a number of different, you have enough respondents, then you can infer that this is not going to be it's not going to have a significant effect. So as a price driver.
Thanks, guys. So, Sri, I'd like to come back to you. When we think about pricing strategy across the product lines, you've got one product today, you may have more tomorrow. How do you integrate and think about pricing strategy in terms to your overall product strategy? How does that integrate for you?
Yeah, there's a couple of things here. One is at least speaking from my own experience, we have a hardware device and we have a SaaS cloud-based software. So there's a number of different features and capabilities that we can bundle together. So our pricing strategy and our product strategy are very closely tied in that as we start developing new features, we start thinking, okay, what bucket does this go into? Can we package this feature with these here, or does this belong over here? And I think it was Brian who was mentioning as you start going, or maybe it was Ed, as you start going from R&D customers to GMP customers and manufacturing, the value changes and also the feature set changes. So there's um, our product team and our design team are very closely tied in with our commercial team to understand how how they would package certain capabilities and how they talk about it. And that's one part of the pricing strategy. The other part, which was very counterintuitive, and I didn't really understand it until I jumped into it, is from the customer standpoint, it also depends on what line item or what bucket the payment comes from. So for a customer, is this going to be a CapEx purchase that they can depreciate over time, in which case, they can be more price insensitive, or is it an OpEx budget where they have to be very, very price conscious on an ongoing basis? Or does it come out of the R&D budget or the facilities budget or the G&A budget? So actually talking to the customer and understanding what bucket, what pot of money is going to pay for your product can also influence how much you can charge. And what we've found is because we have a hardware and a software component, normally we just charge one subscription price for everything. Hardware is kind of included. Well, it turns out that some customers actually want to purchase the hardware so they can depreciate it in exchange for a lower subscription.
Ongoing.
We can make the math work for a 3-year or 5-year contract. So to us it's the same, but to the customer, it makes a huge amount of difference. So they're different.
Gotcha. And Edward, you actually have when we did the prep session for this, you mentioned actually defeaturizing products to sort of adopt pricing strategy.
Yeah, to be fair, that was actually in response to something that Sri mentioned, which was alignment between your product strategy and your pricing strategy. So we were talking very much about, this is some of my experience from back in my GE healthcare days, where it was clear that And I think it was just I was talking about a natural tension between R&D and marketing groups, where the R&D team wanted to make sure that if they developed a product, that they could develop it, to the best of their ability and meet the design specifications that were agreed between themselves and marketing. And sometimes you notice through going through those meetings that there are certain features that are preferred by R&D based on their core skills and competencies. And these get embedded into the design specs, but sometimes they add to the costs. And I think the example that I gave you about the defeaturization was how you can provide a value proposition to a customer, but without necessarily adding additional cost because you've got all of these bells and whistles, and that somehow that you have to have a very, very clear vision on what your product is going to do and what it means for the customer, and maybe hone in on a couple of features that are really enabling for the customer rather than I think the expression I used was you don't want to be don't want to be all to everyone. You want to be able to find that part of the market where there is truly appreciated value for the benefits that your products can bring. And sometimes that means ultimately, comes back to a financial decision about, well, can we really sell this product at this cost? Or can we dumb it down a bit, but emphasize certain features that may be of value. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. Okay. Well, guys, thank you. That's almost at time. I've got time for one more question for you. If you've submitted a question, and there are some questions that were submitted last week that we haven't had a chance to get to, so I would encourage you to save those and bring them to the breakout rooms that we're going to do after. But before we close this part, I'd like to ask each of you, what's either the most common mistake you've seen made by early stage companies in regards to pricing and strategy, or what's a piece of advice you would like to leave before we go to our breakouts?
Jim, I can start if you want.
Yep.
I would say number one error, not putting enough time into this. I used to tell my team at Thermo Fisher all the time, dollar per hour, there's nothing I do as a business leader that generates more value for the company than price optimization. It's not the sexiest. It doesn't take nearly as much time to develop or manufacture a product or a technology, but it way too often just gets kind of overlooked. It's an afterthought. And putting a little bit more effort into this will do a lot more for you than one more experiment at the bench.
Steph.
Yeah, I think I agree with Brian, but something else to add is trying to be very honest about, I think a lot of people think they are an Apple. They are brand new, they have all, but you don't have the brand loyalty, and trying to balance that. You have great features. Maybe you need to scale it back a little bit because you don't have as big of a company and the brand to fall back on, and hitting a different note in being able to scale your product so you can do release 2, release 3, and have a pathway for customers and for your price then as well.
Love that. Sri?
I think more on a practical basis is make the pricing extremely simple and uncomplicated for your sales team to convey and for your customer to understand. We got into all these fancy things. Oh, if you want these bells and whistles, here's the upsell. And it just turned out that, just make it flat rate, and everything will kind of even out at the end if you price it correctly, but make it super simple. As you get more and more features and more complex, sophisticated customers, you can have those other conversations. But when you're just first getting started, just make it super easy. There's nothing that'll screw up a deal than customers going, I don't understand what value I'm getting for what I'm paying.
Shrey, I'm glad you said that. I actually have a friend who's got a company, and he was telling me this story a few weeks ago. He said that he had raised the prices on their product at their company, and the sales team was revolting. They're like, the customer won't do it. They're asking for discounts. We can't get the product moved. And what he did was he said, your commission is based off the MSRP. You're welcome to discount as much as you want, but that discount comes off of your commission. And he said overnight, the complaints disappeared and they were moving product.
Yeah. Funny how that works.
Yeah.
And Edward.
No, just to add to that last point about complexity, I totally agree. A simple approach is better. I mean, it's just the old adage: if you're explaining, you're losing in front of a customer. So it shouldn't you shouldn't be in that position. I think that the other thing is that we need to sort of like get rid of all of the mystery or the mystique around pricing. It's not that hard to understand. I think there are what I've noticed in the past is that there's a lot to it, right? There can be a lot to it, but then you can also chunk it down into sort of manageable things and try to get that um, sense. I mean, even just the simple things like the variation in list price and how it is a strong lever on profit should be understood not just by the senior team within the company, but other people within the company. So just um, socializing this within the company is good, and then listening to your customers is always good. You'll get sometimes you get the unvarnished truth, and it just bring that back into the company and try to I think Shri mentioned before about the experimentation. You never know when you've got it right or whether it's fully optimized. You are going to fail, you are going to make mistakes, but just think of this as a continuous journey.
All right. Well, thank you guys. A little bit different here since we're on the webinar format. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you guys. Really good insights, but don't go anywhere. We're not done. I do have a few announcements before we start the breakout room session. So first of all, can the cohort contact you guys after this with any questions that they have in terms of follow-up?
100%.
Okay. And if it's okay, we have an internal portal, and I'll add your contact information to that portal so they can get your contact details from there. As well, last week's webinar on go-to-market strategy and a product market fit, we have a few more follow-up nuggets from the panelists that have been added to that note page as well. So check that out. We let's see. We've also fleshed out our panel schedule. So if you go to the internal portal page as well, we have the rest of the panels mostly through the end of the year. It's probably 90% complete. So if you want to kind of see what's coming up, that's much more fleshed out. And most importantly, I'm going to put it here in the chat. We don't pay our panelists for coming on here. They do this out of the goodness of their heart. But please complete the survey. It really helps give us feedback on the program, and we provide that feedback to the panelists as well, so they know what you liked and maybe didn't like and how we can improve it for the future. So I've got it in the chat here, but please complete that before the end of the day. Our next webinar is going to be a joint webinar with MedTech Innovator titled Deal or No Deal, Reading Between the Terms. It's really a negotiation term sheet fundraising strategy from the entrepreneur's perspective. And so that's going to be led by an MTI alum, Jeff June, really experienced, great guy. And we have Jay Rosanelli from Cyanex, a last year BTI company, and also Tim Keen, an MTI alum with Tiber Health. And last on the announcements here, on August 19th, that's a Tuesday, I believe, we have a dev proposal writing workshop. This is a writing workshop for BARDA grants. It's 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific time. Vanguard track companies, you are highly encouraged to attend, but anyone in the cohort is welcome to join if they want to. It will not be live streamed, but it will be recorded if you want to watch it afterwards. So thank you for bearing with me through that. So back to here, we're going to get our breakout room started. So I'm going to let each of our panelists here talk about the breakout room they're going to be guiding and tell you a little bit about it, and then you can figure out where you want to go when we open it up. So Brian, you're first on the list here.
If you care about pricing strategy, come join me. No, it's going to be really about the connection point between the business model and pricing.
Okay, Edward.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jim. Can you remind me what my topic is?
It's right here on the slide. Integrating price management using empirical data and voice of customer feedback.
Okay, I will try my best. I maybe got one slide that I can show.
Okay.
Yeah.
And these are really, this is something we haven't done before. So these are really, normally we kind of bring you guys on one at a time to ask questions. This is really just an open conversation with you guys to go into it. So it's not going to be facilitated by me. It's just there for the conversation. Shri.
Yeah, I'll do a deeper dive into lessons learned, how we actually did experimentation in the real world, especially when you're first getting off the ground, when you have really no real benchmark. So, join me. Happy to do a deeper dive into things that we learned and we developed.
Awesome. And Steph.
Yes, so I'm going to be talking about pricing life cycle and the tools to look at optimizing when you have multiple SKUs or as you're introducing new products, end of lifing products. So looking at it through kind of today, looking back and forward on your pricing strategy.
Awesome. Okay, so while you guys are thinking about what you want to go hear more about, officially we're here till 30 minutes after the hour. However, since we're going to close after the breakout rooms and the panelists, they can stay as long as they like, but we're going to keep them open about 45 minutes past the hour. So you can close it at 30 minutes or you can go a little bit longer if you like, but we'll keep it open. So with that, thank you so much, and we'll open up the breakout rooms now.